Where is he?
Where are you? Skull Rock. Do you know it?
Hello, this is Stacy, reporting live from Skull Rock. I am joined by...
Hello, this is Megan. Welcome back to our Stranger Things podcast. We are so excited to be here, and it feels just a little bit, more meaningful that you can actually say that after you've been to Skull Rock now, right? I'm never getting over this.
My Atlanta. Guys, like I said, that's where I want my ashes spread. I'm going to make Megan the executor of my estate. And I mean, let's be real, I'm probably going to go first. So she's just going to scatter those ashes, and it's just going to be so lovely. I mean, maybe the wind might pick up and then they'll just go right into Megan's face. But it will be a meaningful moment,
Oh my gosh, so morbid. Actually, that's really appropriate for the episode that we're doing today.
Exactly. We are gathered here today. And we figured, this was an idea that we had for a while, but we gotta pour one out, crack open those 4 logos, guys. We gotta pour one out for those who we have lost over the last 4 seasons in Hawkins, Indiana. This is our death episode.
I don't know what that was.
That was great. Keep that in.
Little sound effects here and there. So we are, like Stacy said, pouring one out, honoring all of those that we've lost. We figured we would start with some of the deaths that didn't actually stick.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, these are the psych, deaths.
Yeah. It's not as bad as the Vampire Diaries, which you will find out once you finally watch it, because on that show, like, people die all the fucking time, and then they're not actually dead, and they come back and they die 12 times, and it just can't stick. It doesn't happen as much as that show, but it does happen once in a while on Stranger Things that we think someone has died and they're not actually dead.
Yeah.
So who is the first person that kind of happens with?
So the first person that happens to is season 1, Will Byers. The whole first season is about how he went missing. And we all know that at the end of an episode, his ass is found dead in a quarry.
Dead in a quarry.
And you're led to believe that this terrible thing happened. And you have Peter Gabriel belting out a cover of David Bowie's Heroes. And we did a recap, we did a deep dive on this episode. It's such an emotional moment. And I think what really fools the audience at first, even though we know something's going on because we've been with Winona the whole time, seeing, the freaky shit that's going on. But Hopper's line of, "Please don't be the kid," when he sees them dragging the body out of the water.
Yeah. And then also Mike's reaction to that and getting so angry with Eleven because he feels like she was lying to them. And it was a huge emotional impact for that scene, even though it wasn't actually a death.
Yeah, we all collectively made a gasp, but also a sigh of relief when Hopper ends up investigating. And I think it's either the end of that episode or the next episode where you see that the body was actually planted. It's a fake. But for the end of that episode, your heart is torn out of your chest.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's a few more deaths at the end of that season.
Our next one, which without fail always makes me cry, is originally the Duffer Brothers were actually going to kill Eleven off because they just felt like her arc had actually come full circle. And for all they knew at the time, this could have been a 1-season, one and done limited series. So it would have been poetic and kind of fitting that this was the end of her journey. But it's when the Demogorgon has broken through into the classroom. The boys are frantically trying to use the slingshot and stop this huge monster. And just the music that plays and just Eleven with her bloodshot eyes. She's so exhausted and her saying, "No more." And she screams and uses her powers very much like she does to another character further down the road. But, you know, we don't know that yet, but she's already done this. And she basically like makes the Demogorgon and herself evaporate into the upside down. I've compared it to burnt little pieces of toilet paper. And you think that she's gone, that she's dead, that she like sucked up the last of her power to destroy the monster and herself. And damn, doesn't fucking Moby start playing again during that scene? Like at the end?
I think so. Yeah.
As soon as Mike's looking around, I think it starts playing because it coincides with the CPR scene with Will. So I think it is Moby. But damn, yet again, heart torn out, and you don't learn until season 2 that no, she's fine. But at the end of this season, you're like, did 11 die? Like,
Yeah.
that was a very like Stephen King-esque fire starter kind of like vibe going on with 11 sacrificing herself. But what's the other death, bunny ears, that happens in that same episode?
Yeah. So Papa, Dr. Brenner, we are under the impression that he dies at the end of season 1 as well, because the Demogorgon pretty much comes and gets everybody that's in the hallway at the school. So it was again something interesting because people were asking Matthew Modine at the convention that we were just at, like, how did he survive that Demogorgon attack at the end? And he has some pretty interesting theories that we did talk about in our recap episode. But does Dr. Brenner have powers? We don't know. So we thought that Dr. Brenner was dead until season 4,
Yeah.
right?
They hint towards it in season 2 in that upcoming Lost Sister episode when he's like, no, he's still alive. And 11 visualizes him and stuff a few times. But then it isn't until season 4 that there was the big reveal and he has the tiniest little scar on his forehead. And you're like, how'd you survive that? And, you know, due to time constraints, we're not adding him with our listed deaths, but we're led to believe that he finally does bite the dust in season 4. And he kind of has this emotional kind of like goodbye to 11 after he deactivates her collar, and he tries to explain to her, like, I did everything for you. And I really love that scene because 11, instead of like saying like, I understand or I know or I forgive you, she just says, goodbye, Papa, you know, because he was, in a way, if you look at it, kind of her abuser, you know, and her warden, basically keeping her prisoner. And he kind of was a big reason why all this came into motion. So she just kind of leaves him. But then somebody did a meme of how his legs are positioned and he looks like the green M&M. And it ruined it for me.
You can't unsee that.
No.
But what was our big fake death in season 3?
Hopper. Just Hopper. Like, Dustin and Susie have to sing their never-ending story. And from that point onward, it is a domino effect of just real bad timing. And he ends up kind of like giving Joyce the nod after he throws that horrible Russian into the key machine. And she knows he can't get out. He kind of gives her the nod, like, do it. And it makes the machine blow up. And apparently everybody within like a 30-foot radius, they like evaporated. But they did like one of those old school cliffhangers where you're led to believe that he dies. And of course, if it wasn't for this cop-out, this fake-out, we wouldn't have gotten that emotional heart-to-heart letter with, yet again, fucking Peter Gabriel belting out heroes. And it's such an emotional moment. And of course, we were all revealed February 4th, 2020. No, February 14th, 2020. We had our first teaser trailer for season 4 where we see Hopper. He somehow magically survived and he is in a Russian prison.
Yeah, but you did get that post-credit scene.
Totally
in
forgot
season
about that.
3.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of people had a feeling that he wasn't dead
Yeah.
because of the post-credit scene in the Russian prison where they talk about the American.
Mhm.
So that, I think, is what initially made me feel like he probably wasn't dead. And then the trailer is where we kind of had that confirmation, I think.
Yeah.
It's really funny. I'm going to keep talking about the con probably for the rest of my life.
Love
But
that.
if you watch Chris, our friend Chris at Filmstocked, he did a panel with Alec and Andre, who played the two Russians, the
Mm,
scientist and the evil Terminator guy in season 3. And Andre was talking about that scene where his character dies, and he
yeah.
was kind of giving some behind the scenes of like what it looked like on set to have that machine, because that was mostly CGI,
Yeah.
and how his stunt double basically just kind of like jumped into like this revolving element on this just kind of pipes put together, and that's all it was.
That's so
So
cool.
it's, yeah, really cool to hear like the behind the scenes from that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Hopper, luckily he lived. He lived and,
Yeah.
he got to really it was almost like a reset for his character because I felt like they were really relying on, like, comedy in season 3, and it was just really over the top, and then in season 4, like, this man's hit rock bottom, and he just ends up yet again being, this huge hero, so I felt like even though I know a lot of people moaned and groaned about it, like, the scene where he appears to Eleven and he's like, "Hi, kid," and she starts sobbing, saying, "I left the door open 3 inches." Oh, the heartstrings.
Yeah, it's very emotional. So even though it wasn't an actual death, it again led to a lot of emotional impact on the show.
Yeah.
Speaking of
Oh my
emotional
god.
impact, this is probably the worst, we hope, fake death, because she did die
She technically died.
and she's not currently dead, but we
No.
don't know what's going to happen here. And that's probably the worst, like going into season 5. Like, what I'm most nervous about is Max's fate, obviously. So that was, I don't know. I knew I was going to be like tearing up
I'm
here, because
choking up thinking about it.
that scene was the most I've cried on the show.
Ripped my heart out because basically, and we're going to talk about this person's real death, but it's like Eddie Max, and they're just slapped on top of each other. And I know I've mentioned in the past, my late father watched it. This man was not a crier. He was crying his eyes out the last time I ever watched this. And I just remember watching volume 2 on July 1st, 2022. And literally, like, my jaw was like wide open because I'm like, no, no, no. And just the amazing acting of Sadie and Caleb, chills every single time, And then, of course, 11 coming up, which we're all like, oh, this is a new power, but convenient. We want this power. And her just going, no, you're not going yet. Like, nerd chills. Oh,
Yeah, and there was another actual death that we didn't include on our list that happened because of Max's death, because of Max's death, the portal opens up, right? And
whoops.
poor Jason Carver.
Do you know, I didn't catch it the first time I ever watched it. My friend Jeanette was like, oh, didn't you root when Carver got it? And I went, what are you talking about? And she went, rewatch it. And we were actually lucky enough to hear during trivia, Mason told us like how they filmed it. He was wearing like an LED like vest where basically he'd watch these lights on this wire like start lighting up across the room, supposed to be the portal opening, and then it would go over like this little part of the vest. So it was him getting cut in half, which
Yeah,
blink and you miss it.
yeah. But that was super cool to get to hear the actor that played Jason talk about how they filmed that with like the lights. So that was cool. And he talked a lot about how basically he knew his fate, and he knew that he had to play someone that the audience was going to be okay with dying.
Yeah.
So even though he felt like there were some places where he could have included some redeeming qualities in
Yeah.
his character, he didn't want to do that because he knew that he needed the audience to be kind of happy about his death, even though it was a terrible thing that was happening. So
Yeah.
that's such a very nuanced thing to have to play as an actor, I'm sure. So it was really cool to get to hear him talk about that. But
Later days, Jason.
yeah. He's for sure dead.
Yep. So I noticed in our list, and this was equally my fault, we forgot two big ones. So I think they're going to be in our honorable mentions. I don't know if you're now realizing who we kind of left out.
No, tell me, because I knew we were leaving people out, but I was blanking.
Benny.
Oh, Benny.
Benny, which he was the first person to ever help 11, and he unfortunately did the right thing, but he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But yet again, fucking Hopper going, back when I was a detective in the city, I mostly dealt with strangers. Benny was my friend. So
yeah, that is a tough one, right? In like the very first episode, I think, right?
It makes you just hate Brenner. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And that lady doctor, because with White Rabbit playing, it's so heartless and shocking that this happened, and he seemed like such a nice guy. So I do love that they brought Benny's Burgers back in a way with the kind of like the basketball team's hideout. So I did like that because he was the first person to show kindness to 11. And then Barb.
Oh, we almost forgot about Barb. That is totally my fault because I would expect that of you, but not of me.
I looked at the list and I went, oh! But real quick, Barb was like the biggest, like impactful death from season 1. Talk about being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Nancy's getting her freak on with Steve, and I'm going to set aside my feelings with how I feel about that with Barb and how she acted, but she's kind of just waiting for, them to finish up. And unfortunately, her cut hand attracts the Demogorgon. The Demogorgon drags her into the Upside Down and murders her. And it's a really cool shot scene, in the pool. But we see her corpse numerous times. And kind of Nancy's loss of her best friend and the guilt of that is something that carries on throughout the show. And we're reminded of it with Vecna with season 4. You kind of prey on the insecurities and the guilt that people have. So yeah, Barb was a big one. What?
Yeah, I have another one to mention too, but with the whole thing with Barb. So they did a TikTok, Instagram reel thing with the cast at the con, and it was like a candy bowl trauma dump. So it was all of the actors saying like what their character's biggest trauma was on the show. So obviously I thought of that because Natalia, who plays Nancy, she said that her character was at a party while her best friend got murdered. And I was like, Nancy, you were doing a little bit something else.
Yeah. You were climbing that tree, you were running that hill.
And I loved that they got Joe Keery to do it also because I have a couple reels that have gone a little viral on my page and about Steve's trauma. And you would not believe how many people feel the need to comment that Steve doesn't have trauma.
Sure,
and they forget. And they're like, what was Steve's trauma? And I'm like, are you kidding me? This man was captured and tortured in a Russian base underneath of Starcourt Mall.
Drugs, come on.
He doesn't have trauma. So that was what Joe Keery said.
I love that he picks that
in the reel. Yeah, because I mean, obviously that would be a very traumatic experience. And I love that the writers in season 4 just decided to ignore that completely. So
yeah, they're like, they're working at a video store now. They're fine. Jesus. Oh, but yeah, we just wanted to mention like those people, we did forget, but like they were impactful, these deaths, and kind of what set a lot of things into motion.
Our other honorable mention is only an honorable mention because it's not a person.
It's not, but I think we were all affected by this, and it kind of made us, we originally were Team Dart. Adorable.
Yeah, we are Team Dart. I'm very much Team Dart. Even until the very end with
He's
the
like
whole
that
Three
cute
Musketeers.
kid, though, that hits puberty and you're like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
That's kind of what happened with Dart. And who is the casualty?
Oh, Muse. Muse. My poor baby Muse. I am such a cat person, and that whole thing with Dustin's mom trying to find Muse and still breaks my heart because Dustin just decided to leave Dart at home. So the turtle bit the dust too, I think. Mr.
Shut up.
Yertle?
No.
Right?
Did
I'm
he
pretty
eat the
sure.
turtle too?
I'm pretty sure he ate the turtle too.
Turtle. First you're evicted and then you're eaten alive. I didn't
Yeah.
catch that. I'm so disturbed.
I mean, he had to have, right? Like,
Yet I feel bad when Dart ends up biting the dust when the gate closes and the hive mind dies and he like dies next to his like Three Musketeers wrapper.
yeah.
Even though we're like, fuck this thing, this booger, this giant booger demodog. But when he dies, you're like, ooh, Dart. Like, what the hell, Duffer Brothers?
Yeah, we're very confused about this. Like, it's kind of like my dog Leia when she kills like the baby bunnies in the backyard.
Oh,
Like,
Jesus.
yeah,
This is why Quinn and Leia can never be together, because Quinn resembles a baby bunny. But yeah, pour one out. So now let's get into Humans of Real Deaths. Our next one is from season 3. He was only with us briefly, but man, did he make an impact. And that is...
Alexi, no cherry, no deal.
No.
So we did get to meet Alec, who played Alexi, at our
So
Epic
nice.
Cons Upside Down convention as well. He was incredible.
You should have seen me. I walked out of the photo op with him and I went, he's cute. Like, I mean, I was twirling my non-existent hair. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, but he was really cool. And again, watch that panel that I was talking about because
Oh, fantastic.
he's really funny and just like it seems like he has a great sense of humor, but he played this character in such an endearing way. Like he was one of the evil Russians basically, but you also understood that he kind of just got caught into this. Like
He's just doing
he
his
was
job.
a scientist just doing his job.
Yep.
He wasn't evil per se.
No.
And he ends up with Hopper and Joyce and they make such a cute little trio.
I know.
And the comedy there, that was something else he said, that he did not have a stunt double whenever David Harbour is kind of like throwing
grab
him
him?
around.
Oh.
Yeah. They were like, Alec, you can take it.
David Harbour's like 12 feet tall. Man.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I just loved his whole character. Everybody did, I think. Just sipping on his Slurpee and the joy that he had in his face at that fair.
You can do it, mister. And like right away, I'm like, I love this character.
Yeah. And he loved his Woody the Woodpecker and just Looney Tunes, I guess. And it was just the most heartbreaking thing to see him die.
Yeah. It was just such a beloved, sweet character. And especially like his chemistry with Murray. Like, I just loved them both laughing over the fact that Joyce and Hopper hadn't had sex yet. And he kind of like, if you think about it, if it wasn't for this character, they all would have died because he basically showed them how you destroy the machines. And he even says, like, you know, do you want to stop it or do you want to destroy it? And he gives them the directions to do so. So, and just Murray's guilt being like, oh, I was getting a stupid corn dog when this happened. It just makes you hate that effing fucking Terminator guy even more.
Yeah, yeah. It was a very cool scene though, because like the excitement of the fair and like the festivities cut with like that darkness of like him being murdered in the middle of it all is very like stark and like powerful, I guess. And like you said, he did end up being a bit of a hero because he was a big part of them being able to defeat the Russians and destroy the key. And Alec also, like us, ships Alexi and Murray and thinks that they would have been a cute couple had Alexi not died.
Obsessed.
So that was fantastic. Anything else about Alexi?
No, but I got to tell you, every time I will pass a 7-Eleven, I will think of that man.
Exactly. So our next death.
Oh.
So we kind of tried to do order of we're going towards the worst one, like the most emotional, but some snap, crackle, pop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What started this whole crazy season 4 story into motion was Grace Van Dien's demise as Chrissy Cunningham, Jason Carver's girlfriend, the sweet, innocent Queen of Hawkins High cheerleader who unfortunately was under Vecna's curse. And, when that happens, what do? You go and buy some Special K from the local drug dealer. And you share a little bit of chemistry with him in the woods. And you just win everybody over with how sweet and innocent and just how wide-eyed you look. And when I watched the first episode of season 4, literally the Hellfire Club, I was floored because I will never forget turning towards my dad and going, oh, we're going dark this season. And it was a wonderful homage, which Grace has talked about, to the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And just as soon as Eddie comes out with the Special K, being like, found it, and her eyes are milky white, and you don't know what's happening, but you keep flashing into what I assume is her mind. And it was just, they took such a innocent, sweet character who does not have a lot of screen time, but you immediately fall in love with not just her, but her chemistry with Eddie, with Joseph. But it's so goddamn disturbing because not only are they dealing with some heavy subject matters such as, eating disorders, abuse, emotional trauma, Vecna's preying on that and takes this sweet, innocent girl who Grace acts her ass off in those scenes, screaming, running, trapped in her own mind. And when her actual death happens, like, you know what? I don't think Joseph Quinn was really acting. I think that's exactly how somebody would have reacted because it is so goddamn dark and disturbing.
Yeah, it's awful. And it's just so interesting to think about that as like sort of a metaphor for like mental health and things like that. And it makes me think of like, young Henry Creel and also Will, and just like how there is that relationship between the evil force kind of feeding off of those negative thoughts, but then also making them worse and
Yes.
almost causing them. So it's like that back and forth between like, was it Vecna's curse that was making her miserable, or was she miserable already, and then just the curse was able to latch onto her and feed off of that misery? So
and there's so much symbolism too, like her father with his mouth sewn shut and his eyes, almost like he sees how his wife is treating their daughter, but he's turning a blind eye to it and he's not speaking up, protecting her. The food that's all rotten on the table, with the flies and stuff. Her monster, kind of like her guilt, her Vecna is her mother, and Jason Carver even says it like, oh, if Chrissy was in trouble, she would have come to me. Well, a lot of people who are struggling, they don't reach out to people. Mason even said that in trivia because they asked him like, do you think Jason really loved Chrissy? And he was like, maybe in his own way, but he goes, I don't think they had as close of a relationship, at least on her side, because she didn't go to her boyfriend when she started experiencing these weird things. And it's just so heartbreaking. And it kind of like, yet again, it's such an impactful death that it sets this whole thing into motion. And yes, we do have other casualties of the Vecna curse, which are equally as heartbreaking. But I think because especially of that scene in the woods between her and Eddie, she just seemed so sweet and wide-eyed and stuff. We fell in love with her and we feel so sorry for her. So when Eddie does dedicate Master of Puppets to her, like it's a moment, but we see her broken up fucking corpse like 9,000 times for the remainder of the show.
Yeah.
And disturbing.
Yeah. And I don't want to like, say that was it Patrick or
it was Patrick and then
what was the other? Fred. Yeah. They were, again, like you said, just as terrible, and they both had their own little kind of stories, but we didn't get to sort of see them as much. So Chrissy's death definitely set everything in motion and was kind of very powerful all the way through the end with Eddie and everything like that, like you said. But also kind of with Jason and like all of the townspeople, like they were all very upset about Chrissy's death as well. All right. moving back to season 3, we had a pretty intense death at the end of season 3, and it was a little bit, I feel like it was a combination of like a little bit of the Jason death, because with Jason you really disliked him very much as a character, and so it was like a little bit like, okay, well, he deserved it kind of thing.
And I think the only difference is one got a redemption, one didn't.
Yeah, exactly. So with Billy, we had him as almost a villain for 2 seasons.
Yeah.
So it was tricky with the emotions there, because it was a villain dying, and usually you don't care as much about a villain dying, but he did get that redemption in the very last minutes of his life.
Yep.
And you did get to see a little bit more of the backstory. So it's hard to hate him as much, and it's hard to sort of be happy. Not that I'm happy about anybody's death, but it's hard to be satisfied, I guess, by his
Yeah.
death, because it's almost like you wish he had more time to kind of do more to redeem
And Max even
himself.
says that, you know, had he lived, would they have been friends now? Would he be helping out with everything going on? Because in season 2, he's like the human, typical 80s bully bad guy. And he hurt our Steve, so fuck this guy. And then in season 3, he, you know, is still a cocky asshole chasing after housewives, but then something supernatural happens to him, and we see little glimpses of how actually scared he is whenever the mind flare deactivates. And he clearly is in a lot of trouble and stuff, but like you said, the little flashbacks of what happened between his parents, you know, that he was abandoned by his mother, how abusive and shitty Neil, his dad, was, that it explains a lot. The man had mommy issues. Let's be real. And then, of course, in the last final like minute of his life, Eleven's actually able to break through to him, involving the memories of his mother. And yet again, like standing up to his abuser, he blocks 11 from getting hurt and sacrifices himself with the mind flare. And then he uses his last dying breath to apologize to his stepsister. And that death, of course, starts a ripple effect with how affected Max is and the guilt that she carries. And that's what Vector preys on. So Dacre like acted his fucking ass off in this and did such a great job. But like you said, it's a complicated kind of death because you hate him, but then you feel sorry for him. It's weird.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely powerful, and it definitely kind of set a lot up for season 4, like you said, with everything with Max. So that was a big one.
That was a big one.
And let's throw it back all the way to season 2.
This one, I think this was the first time that I was really like, oh my God, they actually did this.
Yeah.
And that is Bob Newberry, superhero.
Just newbie.
Newbie? Fuck! Bob Newby, superhero. Who the fuck is Bob Newberry? I'm making up characters, guys. Forgive.
Oh, we need to laugh. We need some levity here,
We do.
because this was a hard one. Bob he represents that kind of like outsider character too, that we have we have a couple in each season that are seeing the events from like an outsider's perspective and kind of, you know, having to process all of the crazy stuff that's going on, because a lot of our main characters, they've already been in it.
Yeah.
So he's so innocent, and
That's the best way to describe him.
he's so sweet, and you just love him for Joyce. You just love like what he represents for her, some like normalcy in her life, somebody who cares, because you've seen that toxic relationship with Lonnie from the first season, and it's like you want to root for them so badly. And I mean, he's Sean Astin, like we've talked about this, like
Love that man. He is he is one of like this world's national treasures.
yeah, I need to meet him. That was another really big missed opportunity. I did not really understand conventions when I went to my first convention.
True.
So I was so like fixated on the fact that I was going to meet Joseph Quinn. I didn't take the opportunity to meet Hayden Christensen, to meet Sean Astin. Like, I don't know what I was doing with myself, but I'm definitely not going to miss that opportunity again if it
Oh
ever
no.
arises. But Bob's death, he again was a little bit of like sacrificing himself because he wanted to stay and help them get out, and like he had to go down and like do something with the computers, right?
He basically, like, what he does is he's the only one that knows how to work the computer system for, like, the security doors, and I love that he basically, like, laughs at Hopper, and Hopper's like, "Well, just teach me how to do it," and he, like, buys them time. He's the reason why they're able to escape
Yeah.
the lab, but that moment of him in the lobby when you think, like, "Ah, he made it. We're good," and he locks eyes with Joyce, and they're just so happy to see each other. Then one of those fucking demodogs just go leaping onto him, and just how it's done in slow motion, and Joyce's, screams as Hopper's trying to drag her
Her
away.
facial expression. Yeah.
And it's like, we think about that character again because of a few little moments in season 3, because Bob was good for Joyce. He accepted that they were the weird family, that, her kids had a lot going on. And he just seemed like a big kid himself. And I do love that the boys, especially Mike, is like, Bob was like one of us. He started AV Club and stuff. We can't let him die in vain. And it's Jonastic. So, of course, like,
Yeah. Yeah. And just that throwback to like all the 80s movies that he was in, and just having him in this, like, I feel like there's been a lot of instances of that being really cool in the
yeah,
show. So that was cool. And it actually made me think just now of Owens, who we've had a couple kind of like fake outs for him too, with thinking that he might have not made it. So this in season 2, you don't know. Like, he seems like he's kind of taking one for the team and going down with the ship. And he did end up actually pulling through, but then we kind of left him in a very similar situation in season 4.
you better be tied up in a closet somewhere because he's enough. He's been
Yeah.
through enough.
Yeah. Like, I love Owens. Like, and I have some predictions that he's gonna be a bigger character in season 5. And I think that if they don't bring him back in some way, or at least explain what happened to him, that would be kind of a
Yeah.
bummer. So that's, I think, one of my big hopes for season 5 is to kind of get some answers with the whole Owens storyline and his connections. So
I did actually think of a quick little tribute to something else we lost. Angela's nose. Man, that girl, I hope her parents can afford a nose job, because that skate went slamming into it. That nose is gone. That nose is dead. But thank God it wasn't a wooden skate or an ice skate.
you're welcome, guys.
You're welcome.
All right. We're getting there. I think we're here.
We're here.
Okay, let's just turn it off.
We're done. This death,
There's no more deaths.
there's no more deaths. La, 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 la. Yeah, I think we all felt very similar on July 1st, 2022. I had a real icky feeling when they dropped the trailer for those last 2 episodes, and there was a quick shot of Dustin screaming. And I went, it's either going to be Steve or Eddie. And I felt sick to my stomach. And this death, I think, it all hit us pretty bad. And I noticed with your account, you will never do an edit of this death.
I never edit this death.
No.
I have like part of my brain refuses to acknowledge it. And I think that I get the people that believe that it's a very beautiful death and that it's very powerful, and that I can see with all of like the ones that we've talked about how these deaths have sort of
Impacted the stories.
impacted the storyline so much. Exactly. And that I know that it's going to be a big part of everything that happens in season 5,
Yeah.
no matter what, because I think that's just what I'm afraid of. I don't want it to be for nothing.
Mhm. And that was the thing. Like, I talked to our friend Brandy, and I remember years ago, she said he had to have died. They needed a scapegoat. They needed somebody to blame for these murders. He was the one, and it only logically would make sense. But for us, big fans of Eddie Munson, R.I.P., it was just, yet again, we fell in love with this character. He didn't have a lot of screen time, but he just seemed to perfectly fit in with the Hawkins crew. We loved his relationship with everyone, especially Dustin and Steve. And we rooted for him because he was the outsider, the underdog, the weirdo. And we've spoken about this before, he's kind of like the audience. He has really realistic like reactions to the whole upside down and monsters and weird shit. So when he did die, and I think we all felt the same way when he realizes the bats are coming through the door, that they're probably most likely going to go through the portal into the real world. He pauses and looks, and Dustin's screaming like, "You're almost there, you're almost there." And he cuts the sheet rope. And then he says, when Dustin's like, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm buying more time." And he leads the fucking army of demo bats away, and he rides a bike, kind of like how I think Stacy would ride a bike, and leads them away and kind of does buy more time. And everything happens so quick because the editing is so flawless. But we see him eventually, he gets off the bike, he wipes out, and he starts running. But it's him remembering, and he says this multiple times, so you can tell his guilt's really bothering him, that he didn't know what to do when Chrissy died, so he just ran, and he felt so bad, even though there's nothing he could have done for her. But he panicked and he ran because he was scared, and he feels so bad about that. So he says it multiple times. "I did what I did best. I ran." And you can tell he feels like he's a coward, even though we all know that isn't true. So when he stops and he turns around, talk about Billy standing up to the monster and 11 standing up to the Demogorgon. He, like a knight, basically holds up his spear and his shield and lets the bats go fucking crazy on him. But just him screaming and then biting him and going after him, it's just as painful as the Steve scene when he gets attacked. You can almost like feel those bites.
Yeah. And then the part with Dustin is just so emotional. And I feel like you had the foreshadowing moment with them kind of play fighting
Never
at
changed.
the RV and the Never Changed Justin Henderson. And I haven't even rewatched the scene very often because it's so emotional, but I just know that I just actually got to hear Gaten talk about this again because he and Joseph did a take of that scene, and it was late and they had been filming all day, and he said that Joseph's take was beautiful, but he was not really happy with his own take. And they actually ended up filming the scene with Gaten and Eddie's uncle, Uncle
Oh,
Wayne.
yeah. Yep.
And Gaten said he was much happier with like the emotion that he was able to portray in that scene.
Yep.
That then he kind of asked if he could redo the scene
Oh, I love
of
that.
Eddie's death. So like Gaten's takes like were not like the same,
Mhm.
but like you said, the editing is beautiful, but like they actually redid Gaten's part of that scene. So I think they both did an amazing job with it. Like it's so raw
Yeah.
and just
And it's like, it's not meant to be pretty or anything, but of course, fucking Moby's playing. And just Joseph's got these big, big brown, dark eyes, and they're just filled with tears. And it's him like kind of like choking on his own blood. And he goes, "I didn't run away this time, did I?" And it's just fucking Dustin just going, "No, you didn't run." And he kind of spends his last few seconds alive, just saying like, "You got to look after these little sheepy for me, promise me." And he won't let it go until Dustin promises. And then
and he's the whole "I love you,
"I
man."
love you, man," which I
Like,
guess was ad-libbed. And I'm like,
yeah.
and just him being like, "Looks like I'm finally gonna graduate. It's finally my year, Henderson. It's finally my year." And Joseph's fucking death acting. Oh my God. Just,
Yeah. I mean, the man's not a stranger to
yeah,
dying.
he dies multiple ways. But the death acting alone and just Dustin, just screaming and shaking him and stuff. And that's why I honestly think the Duffers knew Rob and Nancy and Steve coming to find poor Dustin like that, holding Eddie's body, it was too much. So that's why we skipped ahead. And I know there's a lot of theories that, will he come back? Will he make a cameo? Will it be a memory? Hopefully not a visions. Hopefully nothing bad. Whatever it is, how they wrote, and mind you, it's devastating to hear the reporter talk about the Munson murders, and everybody assumes that he was this cult leader, killer. But like you said, that scene with Dustin giving Wayne the guitar pick and him just being like, this town will never know that he died.
Was a hero.
He's a hero. He died for them, And
yeah,
man, it's a tough one.
And it's okay because it doesn't really matter what they do in season 5. They can do whatever they want for their story because there is plenty of fix-it fic.
Let's just say take the money and run. They go on a lovely road trip, so it's fine. It's fine. But I'm scared to see what season 5 has in store for us death-wise, because I just feel like the Duffers, they're going to be like, this is finally it. We might as well just kick them in the nuts or non-existent nuts and rip their heart out at the same time. But I've watched Game of Thrones, but I got to tell you, this just feels different because these characters, they feel like your friends. They feel like your family. And even brand new characters like Chrissy, Alexi, Eddie, they're brand new and then they're just taken away from us. So hopefully the core characters are safe. I probably just fucking jinxed it.
I know. I mean, you already jinxed it by getting Steve Harrington's tattoo.
I know. He's a dead man. I'm so sorry, everyone.
Yeah.
I actually should have said that to Joe. Could you imagine? I'm like,
I thought of that. So I was re-listening to the episode that we did where you talk about that. And I was like, that would have been really funny to tell Joe that like, you got the Billy tattoo, then Billy died. You got the Eddie tattoos, then Eddie died.
But you know what would have sucked? I feel like Joe, he's really good at, keeping secrets. So isn't Maya. But I feel like maybe at that exact moment, maybe their poker faces wouldn't have been as great. And I feel like if we even had an inkling that something was going to happen to our precious boy, everybody in the crowd would have fucking punched me.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess nobody asked him about Corey. Did nobody ask him about Corey?
I don't think so.
I mean, good job, guys, because I was so tempted the whole fucking weekend. But yeah,
we restrained ourselves. We were ladies.
Yeah. So we got through that.
Yep.
That was tough.
It was a tough one, but fitting for this time of year. Spooky.
Yeah. I think that's it for our deaths. All right. So we've been skipping out on our little extra segments for the past couple weeks. So we wanted to make sure that we did some filming updates today. We are coming up on Stranger Things Day.
Woo!
So when this episode comes out, that will just be a few more days. Yep. And we are definitely holding out for some cool stuff on Stranger Things Day, maybe a trailer, a teaser, some updates about season 5. But right now, we've just had kind of like a couple little things coming out from the official channels. They were showing the people doing makeup on Vecna's character. They were showing some cool Stranger Things decorations and like one of the makeup trailers. So they're definitely celebrating a little bit on set for this. I guess they're making the Stranger Things Day a whole season and calling it Stranger Season, which, I mean, I don't know. Stranger Season, like it's Stranger Things season all the time for us. Now. So it's like, it doesn't necessarily feel like super special just because we're literally always in it.
We in it.
But we kind of have a few things filming wise to talk about that we experienced firsthand.
Yep.
So do you want to talk about that, Stacey?
Sure. So when we first went to the Krill house, we saw that they weren't actively filming, but you can tell that they had previously been filming maybe the day before or earlier. And there were these big studio lights that had tarps over them and equipment on the lawn. So I thought that was really, really cool that they were actively filming at the house. And I guess like a day or so later, I believe a few days later, it was Sunday, that they were actually filming and they had the entire street sectioned off.
So you wouldn't have even been able to get in front of the house. So it's pretty cool that we were able to see it. And
Yes.
also, our schedules kept getting changed
Hmm.
for the con because some of the actors that we got to meet last weekend were literally filming all night the night before we met them.
Until what was
So
it? Until 8 in the morning or
yeah.
something?
So just knowing that like we literally got to hang out with them while they're filming this show that we're about to be able to see in a
Hmm.
year or so, like that's pretty cool. Like it's I mean, I think it's really cool.
I think it's badass. It was just so cool. And the fact that, even though they had been filming into the early hours in the morning, they rallied and they showed up to the show and everyone was so laid back and awesome. Nobody was cranky or bitchy. Everyone was super cool. And I'm like, man, if I don't get like a full 8 hours now, I'm a monster. These people, you can just tell they're total pros.
Yeah, they were amazing. And like you said, they showed up to see us, and that was a lot. And we're just super grateful that we had that experience. So, yeah, that was pretty awesome. And I know, like people that I know in real life, they're like, oh, like when is season 5 coming? I'm like, they're working on it, like
Yeah.
literally as we speak.
Hmm.
So, we've got some cool stuff to talk about for merch.
We
So,
do.
tell us about merch, Stacy.
So I know that you got yours. You got one right before the trip, and then after. My good friend Mark, he sent me two. We were able to get some of the Stranger Things Squishmallows. We got the Robin and Steve, so the butterscotch and the chocolate pudding. We got two of the same. They're super soft. They're super adorable. They're a must-have. I'm not too sure because I know a lot of people's Walmart orders got originally canceled and things have been shuffling around. I know that there is an 11 available as well as a Demogorgon. Haven't seen the Argyle pineapple one quite yet. And I know eventually they will do a Dustin and an Eddie. That's to be announced. But yeah, we definitely got our Scoops Troop. So very cool with that. But to talk kind of like about merch that involves the con, one of our first stops when we were downtown was Brittany's boutique, which is Vintage Vineyards. And she had an exclusive line of shirts that had the Stranger Things logo, but instead of Stranger Things, it said Stronger Drinks. And we had to order them. They were a must. We are planning on wearing them when we do a special episode coming up real soon. And I've already tried it on. It's super cozy. It's super, good material. And her entire boutique, as were the other boutiques and shops and businesses, just so goddamn cool, especially with how they decorated for the weekend. But I'm really glad that you and I were able to get that.
Yeah. And also, they had really great vendors at the con.
Yes,
So,
they did.
of course, our favorite was Beyond Epic Shop, Emma. And we have our episode that we did with Emma right before the con. So, if you haven't listened to that, make sure you do.
Hmm.
But I have talked about a bunch of the sweatshirts that I got from her shop already. And I actually wore a bunch of them on the trip. I was wearing my Eddie
Hmm.
Munson sweatshirt on Thursday when I was traveling. And that was the one that says the Shire is burning, and it has Eddie Munson. It has like flowers and stuff, and it's
Love that.
red. And then on Friday, when we went to Skull Rock and registration and trivia, I was wearing my Steve, the
Yes.
babysitter, with him at like family video and that sweatshirt. So that was really fun. And then I had ordered from her a Hawkins, Indiana, like maroon sweatshirt. And she was nice enough to bring it with her so that she didn't have to ship it to me. So I was able to wear that. And I even wore it on Sunday in some of my photo ops
Yep.
with Caleb and with Gayton and Gabby. So
I saw that Haley had the same sweatshirt. So you guys
yeah,
were twins, and it's a maroon color, which anytime I see maroon, I think of Steve's car. So I was like, this is fitting. I like
there
this.
you go. And then we
Mhm.
also got from Emma corroded coffin hoodies
Oh
that
my
are
God.
incredible. They're the comfiest, like
Hmm.
most beautiful thing that I've ever worn. And it is absolutely hoodie season right now. It's gotten cooler and I'm just so, so excited about those. So beyond Epic Shop, I just want like everything. And she was able to give her merch to a bunch of the cast members.
Which was so cool.
Yeah, so, Andre, who played the Russian Terminator guy, he was wearing her, like, funfair shirt that she made for them, and Charlie Heaton put on her Jonathan
Yep.
shirt that she made and was wearing it for, like, a bunch of stuff on Saturday, so that was and Maya was wearing her hat.
Yep.
Yep. So that was so cool, and we were just nerding out and so excited for her, and I know it was just, like, the best weekend for her, and we were loving it so much,
Hmm.
so yeah. Any other merch?
I did receive a print from Gemma Draws. It's of Eddie actually sitting on Steve's car. So I got a little mini print of that to add to the old gallery wall. So that was absolutely gorgeous. And like I said, if we ever meet Joe Keery again, we're going to tell him about the battle of sunroof versus no sunroof. And he's going to go, well, yeah, there's always been a sunroof. And then you two will air high five and I will walk into the sea.
Yeah, because 'cause we're on the same page about everything, me and Joe.
It's true.
BFFs. So, I think that's pretty much it for our episode today. That was a
Okay.
fun one.
That was.
It was cool to be doing something that was not a deep dive, was not I mean, we talked a lot about the con, but it wasn't specifically about the con. So we hope everybody enjoyed it. And we just always enjoy talking to each other and talking to you. And we will be back with lots of fun stuff coming up soon. So make sure you find us on social media at Skull Rock Broadcast. We are most active on Instagram. We also have our Patreon that you can support and get access to bonus content. We definitely are cutting some things out of this episode
No.
that will end up there. So if you're curious,
Mhm.
check it out. And we did finish our Steve Harrington Lovers giveaway. So we had 3 winners for that. Congratulations to them, all Patreon members that we have been so grateful. They're so grateful for their support, and we are sending them a bunch of stuff. We have prints, t-shirts, Joe merch, and we were able to get a really cool Steve Harrington print signed for Juan, who won the grand prize, and Joe even wrote on it, the one with the teddy bears. So
Adorable.
we really lucked out there.
Mhm.
So yeah, support us on Patreon. And so we finished that giveaway, but we're going to be
Speaking of the
doing
Patreon, I
yeah,
don't know if we're thinking the same language. I totally forgot this with the merch. Our tote bags.
yeah, we're gonna be doing more giveaways. And our next giveaway that we're literally probably gonna be doing before this episode even comes out is our brand new tote bags. So we were using these tote bags at the con. I'm not a big tote bag person, but I was obsessed with it.
Oh, they were
Like,
wonderful.
it is nice and big.
Mhm.
It's very, like, good quality, and it has our logo on it, which I feel like really pops with the black tote
Mhm.
bag, and it was really fun because that was kind of like people were asking us about it at the
Yep.
convention because they were like, "Oh, are you with Skull Rock Broadcast?" And we were able to, like, say, like, "Yeah, Megan."
Yes.
"Yeah, Stacy." So yeah, and to be told that, like, they recognized my voice was
How
a little wild, but, like, we love you guys so much, so thank you for saying hi at the
You guys rule.
convention. But we are gonna give away a tote bag to one of our Patreon members, and then we have a couple more that our Patreon members will get first dibs on ordering,
Yes.
and then we're gonna do a pre-order for more.
Mhm.
So we'll get in touch with you about that. It's like our first official merch, I think,
Woo, woo.
along with the stickers. So we'll definitely throw some stickers in if you order
Mhm.
a tote bag, but we'll see if we're going to sell the stickers separately. I'm not sure, but we'll see. And yeah, that's pretty much for it for merch, including our own merch, which is wild.
Right.
So we will talk to you next week, I guess. Actually, you know what? You might hear from us sooner than that because
Yeah.
we've got all these con episodes, recap stuff coming out. So I don't really have a set schedule for that stuff. We're definitely going to have at least one more episode next Friday about the con, but we've got a bunch of like bonus type episodes. Um, yeah, so we will talk to you soon. With that, over and out.
Over and out.
Eddie, I'm not sure I love the idea of you driving.
Oh, I'm starting to suck her. Harrington's got her. Don't you, big boy?
And we are back. We haven't talked to you for a while for this little segment.
We have missed you guys.
We've
Yeah.
missed you so much. So we're back with our Secret Steady segment. If you are new to the show and you haven't heard this segment before, we talk about fan fiction. So with the caveat that we know not everybody is into fan fiction
Mhm.
yet, but
Give it time. Yep.
well, it's a good time and we'll try to convince you. No, I'm just kidding. Um, you can turn us off because we're not going to try to sell you on fan fiction, but we do enjoy it. So we
We
keep
do.
it separate from our regular episode, but we enjoy talking about it and enjoy talking about what we've been reading and yeah, just enjoying that part of the fandom as well. So
Which you mentioned in our live, and I'd like you to kind of like restate this again. I know a few people have reached out to you saying, like, now that you've met both actors, Joseph Quinn and Joe Keery, how do you feel about fan fiction? And you and I kind of had similar thoughts about this. So could you restate that?
yeah, so it was really interesting. And I kind of like, I really didn't think about fan fiction like the whole weekend when I was meeting Joe because I didn't really feel like I was meeting Steve. I felt like I was meeting Joe Keery. Like he was very much himself to me. And it was just really cool to get to meet him and get to spend even just a little bit of time with him and hang out the way we were able to hang out with him. And
Mhm.
it made that separation even more distinct. So I already had like a separation of like Joseph Quinn is not Eddie Munson. Like he plays Eddie Munson, but they're very separate. Joe
Polar opposites.
Keery is not Steve Harrington. Like there are things about Joe that the writers have kind of like included into Steve's character. And I also have a pretty good sense of separation between like Steve and Eddie in canon and Steve and Eddie in fan fiction.
Same. Yeah.
So I feel like that kind of separation is there as well. Like I really enjoy Steady and fan fiction, but I don't necessarily think that like it needs to be canon or it was canon or anything like that. So I feel like it's three very distinct things for me. So fan fiction, Steve and Eddie, canon, Steve and Eddie, and then Joe Keery and Joseph Quinn, the actors who
Yeah.
are very much people and are not their characters.
Now, if they had poured him into a polo and some tight jeans and coiffed his hair and like JQ was there with his Eddie wig, I think I'd be having kind of a hard time. But I completely agree with you 100%. The entire time I wasn't thinking of, you know, the weird shit that I read. I was like, no, this is the actor musician, Joe Keery. This isn't Steve. But yeah, you can see a few similar things. But no, I completely agree with you with that. But it's just so nice to be able to talk during our secret segment because we haven't had a chance to do this in so long. But I just recently started catching up on Morning Berries. Oh, my favorite. Latest story, 1,000 Flowers Could Bloom. Without going into any major spoilers, I think I'm only on maybe chapter 3 or 4. But the first chapter takes place in the future, and it's at Steve Harrington's wedding, and he's marrying a female character. And Eddie, who I believe is a success at the time in the music industry, he's coming, and you can tell that there was a bit of a falling out. There's a little bit of tension there. But then the last couple of chapters I've read take place in 1986-87, where Eddie's about to leave Hawkins. His name has been cleared. He's got some government money. He's going to try to make a go at it with the music world. And it's kind of about like him and Steve hooking up and falling for each other. And classic Morningberry is just so beautifully written. This is exactly how I see these characters. I'm just falling in love with them all over again. When the smut hits,
We need that on a t-shirt.
yeah, big time. Like literally, like I was on my lunch break reading in my office and a coworker came in and just started like talking about work gossip. And I like had to put my phone down, like face down and like, I couldn't wait for them to get the fuck out. Yes, I just needed to see what was going to happen next. It was just when the real filthy shit was hitting. So
Oh,
it was
that's
just,
awesome.
it was fantastic, but so well done. But I'm really excited just to dive back into their world because I live for their writing, and I know you do too.
Yeah, I love because earlier we were talking about it a little bit and you were like, Megan, you're going to be obsessed with this. And
Oh
I
my
was like,
God.
oh, I'm so excited because I did read the first chapter with like the wedding and the angst is going to be so good. I can tell because that like how is that going to work out? Like I don't know. So
Woo! I know, anxious.
yeah, so I'm excited for that. And oh, I've been working on finishing up a story from Onion Chiver Azrael's Patreon, which is
Ooh.
really good because I've been reading Scorpio Skies, which is their ongoing Patreon story. But I went back and was reading The Girl Who Eats Flowers, and that was Steve, Eddie, and Chrissy, and it really went in a direction that I was not expecting, and I'm obsessed with it. So can't say enough great things about that Patreon, but as also just dropped today a new one shot that's like a serial killers Steve and Eddie, like for like Halloween vibes, I think. And definitely going to be reading that this week.
Oh yeah.
We're, I'm kind of still just holding out that we might get Prism because I thought maybe we were going to get an update this month, but I don't know if that's happening or not. So again, it's okay because if there never is any more, I'm still going to be glad we read it. But
So goddamn good.
that is probably like one of my favorite fics ever. But
Yeah.
I'll probably cut it out of our actual episode, but I think we kind of thought of an idea as we were recording this episode that we could do a extended
Yes.
segment, extended bonus episode of the podcast about Fix It Fix because I just love exploring like the different fics where the canon events of season 4 did happen. Eddie died or almost died, and like the ways in which that could be fixed, because that was what initially got me wanting to read fan fiction is because that death hit so hard. So that is kind of something that we might have coming up for this little segment of our show.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah. So I can't really think of anything else I've been reading. You did get a little steady signature.
I did. It was actually so cool. So this was my last autograph with Kiri. I'll go more into it when we do our own recap, but Joseph Quinn had signed, I'll have to find out the artist who did it. It's this beautiful postcard of both Steve and Eddie. And Joseph Quinn had signed it for me way back in New Orleans in 2023. So when Kiri signed it, he was like pointing to JQ and he's like, I love this guy. And in my head, I'm like, why isn't Megan with me? Unfortunately, our schedules do not allow so. But yeah, basically, like Kiri was all about the steady, guys. So he loves this guy.
Yeah, I love that he said it like 3 times. I really wish I had been there.
He's all about that.
He actually, I got so the Steady Tarot deck that the lovely Leviathan Libby has created. It's on Etsy and she's on Instagram. I knew that she had gotten one of her Eddie cards from the deck signed by Joseph Quinn. Somebody did it at a convention that he was at in Europe, I think. And I had reached out to her and just said, if you want me to, like, I could probably get Joe Keery to sign one of your Steve cards. And
I love that.
she did decide to take me up on that. And that was really cool too, because I still need to send it to her. But I just think it's cool now that she has one signed by both of them. And of course, she was like, don't let him turn it over because it says steady on the back. But I mean, I couldn't stop him. Like,
You
what was I
just
going to
slap
do?
his hand, yeah.
So he did look at the back, and we didn't really talk about it. Like, I just like said, oh, I'm getting this signed for the artist. And she actually has one signed by Joseph Quinn as well. He and his agent were
They were very into it.
intrigued by the tarot card, and his agent like wanted to look up like what the meaning of that specific card was and everything like that. So that was entertaining, but also Joe even wrote on the card for Libby. Very cool.
I love that.
So that was pretty neat, and I was excited to be able to do that for her. So yeah, that was a pretty cool little steady connection too, as well.
Love it.
Anyway, I think that's it for this
Yeah.
segment of our show. We were happy to be back, and we're definitely going to be reading some more soon. So I'm sure we'll have more to talk about now that things have died down with all of our busyness leading up to the convention.
Now, will this be airing before or after Halloween?
Probably the day after.
The day after? Well, I hope everyone had a great Halloween. I hope they rewatched Trick or Treat Freak because, come on, it's a staple.
Yeah, you have to, right? And we've been doing our season 2 rewatch, which we will get back into soon. And yeah, we'll talk to everybody soon.
All right, over and out.
Over and out.